My name is Anita Manshadi. I am a settler of color with Persian ancestral ties, and I am joining you all today as an uninvited guest on the unceded traditional lands of the Lekwungen peoples, known today as the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations, as well as the Wisanish peoples. Today, I'll be presenting on a scoping review as part of my culminating project on bridging Indigenous ways of relationship building through Indigenous health research, mentorship within post-secondary institutions. I completed my practicum with the Center for Collaborative Action on Indigenous Health Governance. On my left here, we have the team, co-directors, Dr. Jeffrey Redding and Dr. Krista Stelkaya, and research analyst Elizabeth Hunter. The center is the first of its kind Indigenous Health Governance Research Center that has a shared governance model that reflects the partnership of Simon Fraser University and the First Nations Health Authority. There are three pillars that the center aims to explore, which are to facilitate a global dialogue and knowledge exchange, collaborative training initiatives, and research. Under the second pillar, Indigenous mentorship was identified as a key priority for the center and an area that needed to be further explored in literature as well as in practice. Firstly, it is important to acknowledge that Indigenous peoples have been leading and conducting research since time immemorial and celebrated the power of their own knowledge systems, ways of being, and approaches. However, the harmful colonial legacies resulted in Indigenous communities and peoples carrying deep roots of mistrust of health research due to stolen intellectual property, culturally unsafe approaches, and unethical research engagements. Throughout the literature, there was a common thread of a dire need and increased recognition for Indigenous leadership and mentorship within health research and academic environments. Indigenous mentorship within post-secondary institutions can be viewed as a critical component in both personal and professional growth of students and faculty members, as it truly facilitates a richness of cultural wealth, identity, and supports confident health leaders to actively pursue health research and projects that would benefit their communities. The purpose of the scoping review is to understand and map existing body of literature in Indigenous mentorship in relation to Indigenous health research within post-secondary institutions, as well as to identify areas for future research. The research question that I explored was, what is the current state of knowledge and opportunities in Indigenous mentorship among Indigenous post-secondary trainees and students pursuing Indigenous health research? As for the methods, I adopted Arkski and O'Malley's 5-step scoping review framework, which included step 1, identifying the research question. Using the population concept and context framework, I was able to create the research question for this review. Step 2, identifying relevant studies, which involved a comprehensive search with 4 databases, reviewing published peer-reviewed articles as well as gray literatures in the following geographical locations, such as Canada, the US, New Zealand, and Australia. The third step, study selection. A total of 1,594 studies were identified in the search. However, only 11 studies fully met the inclusion criteria and were reviewed in the scoping review. Step 4, charting the data and data extraction. And step 5, reporting the findings. Applying an Indigenous research methodology, such as thematic analysis, was applied to report on the overarching themes that emerged from the 11 articles. The findings of this review revealed 4 overarching themes. The first theme was reciprocity, giving back to community. This theme explored how Indigenous health research mentorship programs help to advance reciprocity through the opportunity to giving back to communities. The second theme was supporting the development of research skills to build research capacity. And fostering a sense of belonging was identified as a third theme among the studies as a way to contribute towards enhancing the mentees' learning experiences, academic performance, sense of purpose, scientific and cultural identity, as well as kinship with peers. And the fourth theme, building student ownership and confidence, identified concepts of self-directed learning in which students became independent critical thinkers and taking ownership of their own research. The findings from this review suggest that there are several positive benefits to Indigenous mentorship through diverse pathways, such as academic mentorship programs and activities, for example, writing retreats, health research conferences, and intensive research training programs, as well as community-based research projects with a partnered Indigenous community. While most studies acknowledge the barriers and challenges Indigenous students and faculty members experience in Western-based academic institutions and health research systems, 7 studies provided recommendations for enhancing Indigenous mentorship in such experiences. For example, weaving traditional protocols and practices, such as storytelling, talking circles, and smudging, as well as place-based activities enabled students to feel empowered to use their Indigenous knowledges and values as strengths to lead research in their own communities while leaving a positive impact as well. However, there were a few limitations from this review to be mentioned, such as all articles were limited to the English language only, as well as restricted to the geographic scope to Canada, the US, New Zealand, and Australia. As well, this review focused solely on Indigenous mentorship within the field of Indigenous health research in post-secondary settings. There are opportunities for future research to examine peer-reviewed and gray literatures in other regions of the world where Indigenous people live, and to examine place-based mentorship activities in community-based health research settings. By doing so, this will provide context-specific findings that will contribute towards a greater understanding of the mentee's research interest, building relationships with Indigenous communities, and addressing nation-specific health needs and priorities. Concluding that future research into Indigenous mentorship is required and is a catalyst for researchers, community representatives, and academic institutions to take actionable steps in supporting Indigenous mentorship while building research capacity for a brighter future with and for Indigenous peoples and communities. Thank you.